Hello, and welcome to this episode of the House of the Dev podcast. Finally, season 3 from Austin, Texas, Raphael Colantonio. Hi, Raf.
Hello, Peter. Hello, Harvey.
I'm your co host, Peter Salnikov. And welcome back to the show, Harvey Smith, game designer and writer, known for his amazing work on Dishonored and Deus Ex. Thank you. It's really nice to have you back, Harvey.
Thank you. And I don't talk to you that often, but I follow you on social media. And I can't believe this is only season 3. Like, it feels like you've been doing this for 12 years or something, like
well, not
the,
12 years.
We're very slow at it.
It took time, yeah.
The internet makes everything feel like 1,000 years have passed since,
Something beyond reality.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You are entering the House of the Dev.
The season is brought to you by Indigo, the investment fund for independent devs.
So, for starters, what are you up to these days? What's your job and life after Arkane? If we don't ask this, people in the comments will. So.
Oh, yeah, of course. Some of what I'm doing is in stealth mode right now, and I hope to have an announcement soon. But it's been really interesting because, I've been in games now for since '93. And so I guess that's 32 years if my American math serves me well. Come December maybe, but 16 of that was with Arkane. And that blows my mind still. I know I mention that every time Raph probably the subject comes up or whatever, and I'm just like, how did that happen, man? Because I was at other places for 3 years. We did a project, things worked out or they didn't, we moved on. One place I was at 6 years, Ion Storm. We made, Deus Ex and Invisible Wars. And, I don't know if Raph would say the same thing, but very often, even 10 years into your career, 15 years into your career, you still feel ignorant. Like you're doing something and you're like, how did we fuck that up? We saw this problem coming, but we didn't see that problem coming. God, it's a classic. How did we fuck that up? So, but when I started at Arkane, it was like, okay, I've been at places 3 years, 6 years. My friend runs this place. I like what they do. This is exciting. And then you look up one day and it's like, oh, half of my career at one place. It's amazing. And when I look at that run of games, not even the shit I worked on, but Dinga and Sebastian Maton and Leon working on Deathloop is brilliant. Raph leading Prey, which is one of my favorite games of all time.
The best.
It's so fucking good. I think about it as a reference all the time.
Sure.
Because it's like an update and a deepening of games that I already loved, right? But it's very pure. On day one, when Raph started talking about it, he loved Dishonored, obviously that experience, but but he was like, I want to do the game that's one mission, and it's very contiguous, and it's just one big simulation. And instead of doing the ellipse thing between missions, like in Deus Ex, where time passes or whatever. And I love that too, and it's just so brilliantly done in Prey. But anyway, not even just talking about the games I worked on. The Arkane period of time before me, Arx Fatalis, brilliant and innovative with the gesture spell system. Dark Messiah, Might and Magic, sort of precursor to Dishonored. But then Dishonored 1, Knife of Dunwall, Brigmore Witches, Dishonored 2, what a run. And then, we did Redfall at the end as part of the Everybody's Going Games as Service. And COVID happened in the middle of that, and work from home happened in the middle of that, and the Great Resignation happened. And we really weren't the right people to do, an online with a store, which is how we started, and then we started ripping that out halfway through it. It was just but nonetheless, I worked with some of the best people, and I'm kind of meandering now, but it's it's just I spent 16 years there, and what's crazy is, and this is something that I wish people would stop, take this, think about it really hard, because I worked on a game that got bad reviews. It got shipped early. It got taken away from us by the publisher. And some of the people on it, some of the leads, are the same people that Raph and I made Dishonored with, and that Raph and Ricardo and company made Frey with. Some of the same, not all. I mean, many of those people were in Lyon and they're brilliant, but like Karen, lead architect, um, and Stephen Hurd, our lead programmer at Arkane, our tech director at Arkane, like some of those people, Ricardo, they worked on that earlier game that I was referring to, Black Site, and then they also worked on Prey or Dishonored, and it's just like it's the same thing we said about the country, full of good people making good food and having amazing lives. But the tiny group at the top makes decisions that like change things. And of course, as a leader, you have to take a lot of responsibility for following their path or whatever. But like, um, it's just amazing. Anyway, to get back to the point,
Yeah.
I got the super rare opportunity that almost never happens for people, where I got like a year or more, a year and a few months of not working, where I just did my shit on my own, And I started working on a book of D&D monsters, and I'm going to publish that soon. And that was just a pure work of joy. Like, I love pen and paper RPGs. It's I used to think when I was little, I thought, well, when I get older, I won't do this anymore. It's like better now than it was then. I play with a group of people that I play with two groups. One group is all the modern game, like it's a fifth edition, the update from 2024, etc. And another group, we literally have to go on eBay and buy the books from the 1970s, because we play the first edition version of the game. And the guy's whole house is set up with like miniature figures and a table that has the maps in it. And this is the guy that Raph found and recruited into the industry, who was a thief modder who made Lady Boyle's Last Party and Dishonored and, did some other cool shit. So anyway, I made that book and it's not out yet, but I hope to finish it soon. And then on the video game front, I'm definitely working on some things in the background. And again, I hope I can talk about that soon. But the joy of having a year off is like, that sort of time has happened to me several times. Like, I grew up in a household that was very tense. There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of like not having everything you needed. There was a lot of fear. And you sort of live into this regime, until you hit a certain age, and then you start working. And like in my case, I joined the military and moved to Germany, right? So again, that was a positive experience for me, but it was still very much regimented. And then I went into video games and it was like 80-hour weeks and sleeping under the desk in the early 90s and all of this bullshit, trying to make a name or trying to get creative control, trying to prove myself again. I'm worthy. I'm not worthless. I swear. As it feels like a continuation, right? And there was a moment, and I think it happened after Invisible War. I think that's when it was. Actually, after the Air Force, I had 6 months because I was on unemployment. So I had 6 months of just like living in Austin, hanging out with friends, playing sports, And then after Invisible War, I had 3 months off, and then I consulted for a while, so my life was pretty easy. I would lay by the pool at my apartment complex and work on some documents and go back to the apartment and play a build of this game for Ubisoft or EA or whoever at the time I was consulting for. And then like there aren't many breaks like that, right? There was maybe a 2 or 3 month break after Midway collapsed for me after I got fired. But after Arkane, man, I took over a year off, and it's such a luxury, it's such a privilege, and I know most people just can't afford to do that, but I was lucky. I got severance, and then I also had some money that I spent, my own savings, and just having a year to clear your head and to remember what you love and how you like to interact with people and how to be authentic, and it's fantastic, and I don't know if everybody's had that, but like, man, I always tell people I've never been the same. I realized that after Ion Storm, where I took like a big window of time because, like I said, it was like a few months without doing anything, and then it was consulting, which is a pretty different type of job. It's not the same as trying to be creative director or lead designer or whatever, which is just constant stress. Waking up at 2 a.m. to write shit down or check an email from somebody living in Europe or whatever. arguing with people about, no, this is what we set out to do. This is what we got to do, you know. And so having that time off was amazing. I feel completely different. I'm sick today, but like other than that, it's like everything is really good. And I'm very excited about the stuff I'm working on. So hopefully I can talk about it soon.
Now loading the House of the Dev.
Nice. I actually think that we don't talk about often enough. We had Tom Hall on the podcast, and he said something like, he said that he's been recovering from Anachronox for like 7 years or 11 years, something like that. Yeah, the role of the creative director is really smashing. It gets you out.
I feel like you either stop and recover or you dive into the next thing. It's just like, you know, I see friends like Raph. I think he's just dived into the next thing over and over, you know. But Tom Hall is a super sweet guy, very funny, very creative.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
he's got a good heart, and we worked not with them because they were in Dallas, which is like 3 hours away from Austin by car. But John Romero and Tom Hall were very good to us. They supported us. They gave us a home. Like they let Warren spend a bunch of money to make Deus Ex. They didn't bother us. And periodically we got to hang out with them. And Tom was always this amazing guy. And I know what he means because recovering from being fired over Black Site, recovering from Invisible War, transitioning to console and getting destroyed, you know, by a certain group of people. And the game not shipping the same way we wanted it to, although, you know, people forget that Deus Ex shipped with levels that ran at 5 frames a second, you know, so, but then like, you know, recovering from my experience on Redfall, like he's not wrong, you know, there's, there's like psychic damage you take from all this kind of stuff, you know, somebody that you believed in a lot and you wanted to work with a lot, and then you felt betrayed, or
yeah, I think it's even more true when because I think even if it's super hard, when you ship something that you're proud of and it's really like it's so healing, and the same way the other kind destroys you for 10 years, this one also boosts you for 10 years, right? Like I needed Dishonored to recover from The Crossing. You know, The Crossing was a game that never shipped for me, where, man, for years, and I'm one of those, you know, I'm one of those that hangs on to pain. If something hurts, I'm just like, and some people are so good at moving on. I'm so bad at it. Yeah, The Crossing really, really hurt me for years. And it in fact, it took Dishonored to recover from it.
Yeah, man,
but Dishonored was a miracle. I'm sure you were healed.
It was
one
a
of the best games ever made, like, in my opinion.
And we were saying this with Harvey yesterday. Actually, it's interesting. We were talking about how those miracles are so hard to put together, because it's not just having the right people. It's also having the right group that supports you, the right money, the right market. Like right now, the market is exhausted. It's mean. You know, they're like super. They don't want to pay for anything because, you know, somehow they got used to not paying for games in a way, you know, like all the subscription methods, etc. Like it's not just games, it's everything, you know, content in general. Like we're in an era where people don't really value content. It's commodified. It's like it's you know, people are fast to move on. It's just there. There's so much of it. There's too much of it. So the competition is super high. The technology is extremely high, so it leads to having huge teams. If you have huge teams, you can't really take risks. You can't really be creative. I mean, you can, but it's super dangerous, and and then it's going to cost even more because you have your entire team waiting for, you know, in confusion because you're trying to do something special. So there you are. You know, there are 20,000 games that shipped last year.
20,000 games.
Yeah, and in 2000 there were like 200, right? And so yeah, can we make that again? Can we do another Dishonored? Can we do another one of those? Because Dishonored was, it reached its market. It was a game that we're very proud of making, and we had, the team was mature, still had a lot of energy. So it's kind of like a mix of things that happened. And then the timing was incredible. Like I think that year. There was a need for that kind of game. Like last game like that people had played was, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but there was something about
Thief Deadly Shadows, probably.
Probably. The market was ready for another one of those, pushed by Bethesda, who was great at marketing it, and it's a perfect storm.
Yeah, I agree completely, and the only other thing I would add to that is also a few things slipped out that year, giving us a better window, right? Like we were about to ship and a couple of big titles slipped into the next year. And so Dishonored on October 9th, I think 2012, just had this like window. And it was, we also got more time. Like at the end, we went back and asked Bethesda for more time a couple of times, I think, totaling about 6 months probably, where we could have shipped the game to where we did. And that is, I always tell people, the worst games I've worked on, it was because we finally have a game, we can finally look at it all. Now we could go through for 6 more months and make all these edits, little tiny edits, not revamp the whole thing, not big technology, but just like little tuning changes, move some loot over there, put a sign here, whatever, give this character one more scene, and it makes a tremendous difference. Like I've told the story before, but we got to where we were going to ship Deus Ex, and we asked for 6 more months, and Eidos was so distracted by what was happening at Ion Dallas that they were just like, sure, go ahead. And then we just sat, and it was mostly like programmers optimizing, level designers making little tweaks, deleting some things story-wise, so it got tighter, and it makes a tremendous difference. I felt so much what Raph was saying about the crossing, because when I joined Arkane, I mean, I guess it was 2008 or something like that, but it was all about the crossing. That was the thing that they were working on. They had been working on so hard. It was beautiful. This alternate reality Paris. It had a cool story. It had a killer feature where one person is playing through as a powerful ninja-like figure, and the other 4 people are playing as like a little Counter-Strike squad, inserting at points along the campaign to try to stop that person. Again, the art was stunning, and it was so innovative, and this was a team that had shipped cool games. Like, the fact that it didn't get funded, to me, is just like a failure of the industry, right? And I saw how much it affected my friend Anthony, who I mentioned earlier from Lady Boyle's Last Party, and how much it affected Raph, and how much it affected Julian. Like, there were all these people that were just like, oh man, this is a gut punch. And then when we got together on Dishonored, I mean, some things happened in between there, right? But then Dishonored finally started coming together, and we were so nervous, and we were just constantly revising, I would come in with a crazy idea, and we would like jump into it. Raph would come in after a weekend and go, you know what we need to do? We need to cut this and add that. And it was just like, it was, when we shipped it and the reactions started happening at every level, to the sound, Daniel Lick's music, the art direction, the gameplay, the fact that there was another stealth game, the setting, which I wasn't as psyched about initially, sort of 1850s. And Ricardo had joined us and was like, no, this kind of like steampunk adjacent thing is really hot right now, and it's different. And I was like, it is different, and of course the team at Arkane made it even more different. But it was just like it hit, and you could just feel the regeneration happening. And it's not just being flown out on a private jet like we did. We got flown around a couple of times. It's not just going to the Game Awards and winning an award after all that suffering and pain. It's also just looking at the team and realizing every single person on this team is going to carry this for a decade. They're going to be proud of this. And I know that because we had shipped Deus Ex, and we were like a tiny team No one gave us any respect. The team fought constantly. People on the team didn't even know what game we were making. I would say a third of the team understood what game we were making. And the world just blew up after we shipped the game for us. I remember Doug Church coming back to the office because he worked on the game, off and on with us, and we were just like, I wonder how this game is going to do. And he was like, everyone's talking about it. And he knows everybody in the industry, right? He talks to everybody, and he was like, you're going to have a really good GDC. I remember he said that. And I was like, I didn't even know what he meant, right? Because I'd always gone to GDC and it was terrifying. And I got to see a few friends, like Clint Hawking or somebody. But like in general, GDC was like, has always been to me like a big alienating crowd with my personal psychological problems, I guess. I don't do well in a big crowd like that. I feel anonymous and a little adrift. Maybe everybody feels that way. I don't know. But like, and then you find that little corner where you talk to your friend, like this is how Raph and I would talk off and on, just like at the trade shows before we worked together. But he was like, you're going to have a really good GDC. I'll never forget Doug said that. I was like, oh, okay. And then we went to GDC and everybody was just like, oh my God, Dishonored, and it was life-changing and regenerative, and it made all the other things like, okay, so Deus Ex wasn't a fluke. With the right people and the right support, like Raph said, we can do cool shit and there's an audience for it, right? And
though when you're doing it, though, the funny thing is, as we were doing Dishonored, because it's hard to remember exactly, but I do remember some of the feelings that I had. I think it was the same for you, where we were like, will people even care? Like, it's such a weird world. Our story is a little obscure. Mechanics are super indirect, and we were, yeah. And frankly, the game sucked for a long time. That's the other thing, is that when you are in it and you don't know the end, you don't know that it's at some point you're going to be presenting it and getting awards and all that. Because right now all you see is that your locomotion sucks absolute ass, and that the AI is not working, the stealth is broken to a level that you don't even know if you're going to be able to repair it, and there's this moments of despair practically in every game I've worked on. Which doesn't mean that because there's despair, then it's going to end well. But what I mean is that no matter what, there is those moments where, like, when you're in the middle of it, there's nothing guaranteeing that the game is going to be good at the end. And then when in the case of Dishonored, we pull it off at the end, it really feels like some sort of a miracle. Miracle with struggles. We made it happen, all the entire team, like the 80 people that worked on it or something. But it's a weird cycle because it lasts 4 or 5 years of doubt and struggle, and making those changes where you go like, oh my God, if we hadn't seen that, if we hadn't made that change, the games would suck. And then when you make that change, you go like, how didn't we see it? How didn't we see it for the past 6 months? How could we live with this problem in the game? And now like we feel so much better by having changed the story, or something that would feel like you would not even dare thinking of. When we moved the role of Emily, and she was in the brothel, and she was not even your daughter. she was not even the true heir to the Empress. Like the story was fairly different back then. And then at some point said like, we should change that. And I remember that, I think it was post alpha even, like we were like, we're going to change that. And that was causing so much stress, but we're so glad we did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say before we got that extra 6 months, speaking of Deus Ex specifically, I would say it was like a 75% game. And then we got that 6 months, and it's so often it's like, hey, what happened to Gunther Hermann? People like that character. Oh, he just vanishes after mission 3. Okay, well, cool. How about I put him in the cathedral in Paris for a final showdown? And on the way to that, he talks to you because he's watching you through a satellite. And so we build the character back up, and then you fight him. And then we also had this secret little twist idea. If you found this secret information, you don't even have to fight him. You just say his kill phrase, and because he's a cyborg, they built in a failsafe, and he fucking dies or whatever. And so, like many different ways, that one change, which took at the time, given development tools, it took like a day to set that up, and then you call the guy who does the voice, and you say, "Hey, we need the following lines," and he gives you the lines, and that's it. And the difference in the game, when that area was kind of empty before, and you don't even remember Gunther Herm, what happened to that guy? I don't know. To like, whoa, he's watching me through the satellite, and we only put that trigger on the rooftop, so we could guarantee that it made sense, right? Like, so you're on a rooftop because that's what you do as a player. And he goes, I'm watching you from the satellite, crawling around like a little bug. And it's fucking cool, And then you go fight him. He tells you where to meet him or whatever. And then you have this trick up your sleeve, like, here's the kill phrase. And, those kinds of changes, they make all the difference, So, and Dishonored obviously went through the same sort of process there. And sometimes it's even smaller things. Like Raph is talking about how did we not see this? And it's like you have like 8 fires burning, and one of them is fucking huge, and one of them is pretty big. And you finally put out the big one that is like, oh, the game crashes when blah blah blah, or there's a delay before people can see me, and the AI is broken. But you put out that fire, and now this one is like, whoa, let's turn our attention to this one. And then you put that one out, and then only then do you notice these other 3 fires that were just completely covered because something bigger was going on. And really, you have to get to that point where everything's smooth and shippable, and then evaluate the game. It's post-production, and this is what execs don't get. This is what financial planners don't get. Do you want to make all the money, or do you want to make no money and leave a crater in the ground? You better give the creative team time to really massage things after it's finished. I know we said we would ship, but after it's finished, you might need more time to evaluate, which of course is the team should finish early so that they have that time, right? And be disciplined and cut enough stuff and yada, yada, yada. But sometimes it's little things like, when we got this very concerted feedback from ZeniMax. It was like, people give you a lot of feedback. Like some executive from, I don't know, was it ZeniMax Japan or something, wrote us an email when we had the company-wide playtest. And he was like very polite, but he said, I see that you worked very hard on this, but unfortunately Dishonored will never be a good game. That's the email that he sent to me and Raph. And you can imagine how much we wanted to stab ourselves in the dick, and just like go home and don't work on it anymore, And
I don't love games anymore.
And so, yeah, but like the concerted feedback we got, ignoring all the noise like that, because this guy was clearly an idiot. But like ignoring all this feedback that's random, like, because one programmer on our team, I love this guy. He was like, I hate slow-mo. The slow-mo people are really going to hate it. I was like, I'm not sure about that because it gives you a moment to appreciate and it's dramatic. So the feedback is often, that's your feedback, man. That's your personal feedback. But when a trend comes up, and we got this trend at some point that was like, you guys have made a very dark, oppressive world with the fucking disease and rats and people fucking each other over and stabbing each other in the back. There's nothing to love in this world. Like, there's no reason to want to save it. I want it to burn to the ground. And so part of it was elevating Emily as a character who reflected back how you're playing and saw you as a father figure. But also part of it was like, I remember when Corvo escapes the jail, Holdridge Prison, and makes his way through the sewers and all that shit. There's a point where there's just an intersection. You've made it, you're away, there's a safe space. You're now going to move on to the next mission, you're going to get to a boat or whatever. But there's this little spot where the sewer wise, and part of it looks out over the river and part of it keeps going to where you need to go. And we put these 2 dead bodies, like these 2 young people, a man and a woman, and left a bottle of elixir to heal yourself. And we put a note that said, I don't even remember the words, but like, we're both sick now, we're both coughing, but we only have 1 bottle of elixir, and splitting it in half is not enough. I think we're just going to sit here and watch the sea until we fall asleep or whatever. And it's so fucking sad. And it gives...
There's a lot of that in that game.
Yes. And so we started...
A lot of corpses with notes. Yeah.
Yeah. About how they couldn't save the kids or the lovers died
sad journals, families and all that. It's very touching.
we went through and added that layer to give the plague this like emotional impact, and of course the player, what they do is like loot the elixir immediately, drink the healing potion, and maybe they read the note, maybe they don't, but the number of people who have mentioned that particular note to me is like almost the Deus Ex laughing when your boss tells you not to go into the women's restroom.
Yeah.
Because if you go into the women's restroom as JC Denton, you later get corrected and JC, stay out of the women's bathroom, it's creepy, or whatever he says,
So
and
unprofessional.
yes, yeah. And so many people have mentioned that note and a few things like that, or the drawing that Emily does if you're playing like a monster. And she's like, Daddy, it's this like dark, terrible thing, And it's like those little details, man,
But the thing about those little details is that they are in the 6 months you're talking about.
Mhm. Yeah. And people outside of games. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say those are the cherries on top. And if you don't have the structure for the cherries, you can't do that at the beginning. So that just to reiterate on how important is that last phase, because that's really where your game goes from it's working, it kind of makes sense, to oh wow, it's absolutely fantastic, and the attention to detail, and I can't believe they did this and did that, and those are even like easy to do. That's the thing, like the bathroom thing, or like some of the stuff we did for Dishonored. They are technically easy to do. It's just that you need to have the full game in context before you can actually do those little things.
Yeah, you're right. You can't do those first. And, like if some guy comes to my house and makes beautiful cabinets because I paid him to make cabinets or whatever, like I could never do that, right? I don't have the 20 years experience with the tools and the design, and that's just not the way my vision works. But if I come in and I open it and it's beautiful, it's brilliant, but it swings and two of them bonk into each other in a weird way. Like I open the opposite ones and I could say, wow, it'd be better if they don't bonk like that. Can you put a hinge in there that stops it or something? I have improved the cabinet by like 10% or something, right? Or 5%. And so I'm like, why didn't the guy do that in the beginning? Cabinet guy. But it's like, it's easy to look at a game when it's finished and you're playing it, and you should be able to make it 1% better as a player. You should be able to look at it and go, if they had just done this one thing, it would be a tiny bit better. Like, you're probably right, man. But like when we started, it was a giant nothing. It was a void of people talking. And then it was a giant pile of garbage, right? It was like wrecked pieces. And then it started to be kind of cool. And then we got a pass where we like saved it at the end. And then we had to ship it. That was it. There's no more money. There's no more time. You're going to miss Christmas, whatever. If we had even 6 more months, maybe we could have made it better. But like Raph is right that like it can't happen out of order. And you always think it could. Like, why don't you just start with the note? Like, dude. And further, if there's not a cool structure there to add these things on top of that frustrates the player in the right ways and rewards the player in the right ways and alternates the experience. Like 1 minute I'm swinging through the world and the next minute I'm fighting, and then I'm listening to a conversation, then I'm looting, and then I'm reading something, and then I'm watching 2 guards fight. It's like alternation of that experience. If I don't have a structure like that, 1 minute it's stealth and then it's experimenting with possession, which is fascinating. And maybe one of my favorite things we've ever done in games is the possession spell in Dishonored. Like if you don't have something cool, you can't put cherries on top of it. It's like cherries on top of a pile of shit would not be great, right? But anyway, yeah, it's all a long-winded way of I don't even remember the question we're answering, but
there was no question, I'm afraid. Anyway, what do you think of the situation where when a studio is limited, has serious time limits, and perhaps they saw this or heard this podcast and they go like, wow, we need those 6 months, but we don't have any months left to polish the game, to make it tight. It's not, I mean, the polishing period is something that everyone has on their minds, but this is something else. This is something that lets you reevaluate the game as a gamer and add things that really makes the game even more tight than it already was. So what if someone doesn't have extra 6 months? Is it wise to stop the production, or can you do it while doing all other things to finish the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a nuanced situation that it depends, right? Like, it's easy to say, oh, you should have killed that one. Maybe, but what if it was the only thing that looked promising? What if the pitch material was great, you know? Um, like, you just have to look at everything. And I am sympathetic, by the way, to the other side of this coin, because if you've ever worked at a startup, which I think, you know, we have, you get an amount of money and you have a finite budget, and that's it, right? You can't go hire the 10 people you want to hire. You have to hire the 3 that you need to do this part of the work or whatever, right? And you can't go forever because you run out of money. And if you're working inside a mega company, I guess money is weird. It's not a pool of money now. It's like an ever flowing. The stock goes up, and we take out loans, and then we pay them back, and it's all kind of magical. But like business at its purest sense is like you have a certain amount of materials and people, and you try to make a thing, and you know. If you planned poorly and you don't have enough wood to build the bridge or whatever, then you're fucked. You either have to go beg for some more wood, or you know, whatever, make a different bridge. And so people have different strategies for this. Obviously, a lot of people have had great success with early access, because if the game is compelling and the team is good, you know, they put something together, and a community of people will come in and you know, help them make it better or give them input, and then they go a long time, and then when the game finally sees the light of day, it's got the magic, right? You know, even Baldur's Gate 3, one of the biggest, most brilliant RPGs of a classic sense I've ever played, was like a long time, I think, early access, right? So they got
a couple of years.
Yeah. So, but what was I going to say?
But others go with patching and updates.
I'm terrible because if I have so little time every day that if I hear, and I guess this is true of everybody, I'm 58. I'll be 59 in like 2 months, right? 3 months or something, right? So your responsibilities go crazy with family and with company and with friends and everything else, and your energy goes down at the same time. It's really fucking cruel. If I don't work out 3 times a day, I start feeling like, or sorry, 3 times a week, I start feeling like shit, you know, like physically ailing, like my back hurts or my legs hurt or my knees hurt. My energy goes down. If I manage to work out, it takes me like, you know, getting dressed, getting in the car, going to the place, meeting my friend, like being there for the class, finishing the class, getting a smoothie, going home, showering. That's a 2-hour window or something, right? And I'm only awake for, you know, I don't know what it is. It's 18 hours a day or whatever. But yeah, so
so playing games is not really in your plan.
Not a gamer anymore.
that's true to some extent, right? Like I'm playing Planet of Lana right now on PlayStation Pro, and the last game I finished was Astrobot, which is fucking brilliant, even though I was like, how could this be brilliant? But it's brilliant because of the mechanical tuning and the use of the hardware and all that. And before that, I've talked a lot about how I put hundreds of hours into Elden Ring and played some of the DLC as well. Although I haven't finished the DLC, but I finished the first game like 18 times. And because it, you know, it's just fun after a while to do a soothing replay, right? Like you run through again and maybe you missed one talisman, or you never fought that one boss down in a one cave or whatever, you know, or you never tried this combination of armor, weapons, you know, ashes.
Such a stressful game, and you're so easy about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is very stressful, and I started all their other games before, and I never got through any of them. I never finished them. I was really frustrated because this is some of the most innovative art and story setting stuff. It's just crazy. It throws everything out. Like Dark Souls. I remember like going through this gothic weird dungeon, and you finally get to the end and you make it to the giant bird nest, and this bird grabs you and flies you to the next area or whatever, and it's just
Yeah, and
like,
it's
man,
so unpredictable, completely
there's
unpredictable
nothing
design. Yeah.
there's nothing boring about any of this. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
But to get to it, you have to beat these bosses, which I'm not great at, you know? And so Elden Ring's brilliant innovation, and I'm sure the hardcore fans are like, nah, that's not the good part. The good part is that you can walk away from the bosses and level your character and then come back later when you're stronger. And so then, I mean, it took me a long time to beat the first boss, Margot, I think. Is that the name? I don't know. I'm forgetting the names before Godfrey or before Godric the Grafted or whatever his name is at Stormvale Castle,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah.
have to fight his right hand dude, right? It took me forever to beat that boss, and I kept raging. I'm gonna quit this game, and people were like, "No, man, just keep playing." And then you finally get to the point where that fight is easy, and then you fight the next one, and that's a little easier, and then you really get it. You're like, okay, you can make this game as hard as you want it to make. And the people that are super hardcore, they literally take off all their clothes and they just like roll around fighting these guys trying not to get hit or whatever. And it's like, power to you, man. You've made the game very, very hard, and I appreciate that your reflexes are that great. Um, but I play indie games like that same year in Elden Ring came out. Inscription came out, and I had never
Hmm.
played that guy's games before. I'd never played Pony Island or whatever it's called. I think is, and everybody said that was brilliant. So I played Inscription, and I was just like, this game is fucking rad. This game has so much sense of mystery, and it feels so authored, and it feels like a conversation with these characters. I love this game so much. Um, and so. And then every now and then someone does something brilliant. Like many years ago, XCOM was one of my favorite games of all time, and they updated XCOM in such a brilliant way. Like I couldn't believe I was living in France at the time. I couldn't believe how good the update of XCOM was. Um, so every now and then there's something that captures me. But like for instance, I heard the new Spider-Man is really good, but like I played the shit out of one of them and I don't feel like I need to play it again. And that's terrible because people probably played Dishonored and they go, "Yeah, I hear Dishonored 2 is brilliant and has a couple of really amazing levels, but maybe it's been too recent. I don't need to play that one. I played the first one." And it's like, ugh, bummer. I wish you had seen the second one, because it was like in many ways it's like deeper and cooler. The first one's probably pure and has more punch, but the second one is really interesting. It has a couple of missions that would blow your mind. Um, I don't remember, but there was a game. I don't remember where I was living. But anyway, when Thief came out, and it was like, every night, that's all I could think about was
Yeah.
like turning out the room light, shutting the blind, sitting down, putting on headphones or cranking up the speakers, and just losing myself in this game.
Yeah. Sometimes we take stuff like that for granted these days, but sometimes uh there's just it ended somewhere down the road. When you play the first Baldur's Gate, you can hear how detailed the audio is when your party moves through, let's say, a tavern. There's a wooden floor. They are, their shoes are bashing on the wood. Then there's that carpet, and the sound is a bit muted. Then they're back on the wooden floor, and everybody is clanking with their chainmail and plate mail, all that, squeaking leather armor. And you go like, wait a minute, this is 1998. Almost 20 years after. Not every RPG contains so much detail in the audio. But that really works. Back to the topic of the episode, actually. The magic sense of immersion. It's a really complex thing to talk about, obviously. But I think in some measure, every game wants to be immersive. Not every game has to be an immersive sim, but the sense of connection between the gamer and what's happening on the screen is crucial. I mean, even in Pac-Man, you're being hunted, and if you stop, the ghosts will eat you, and you're gonna lose a life. And sometimes, back in the day, a coin, which is even more important sometimes. And sometimes it's not even for the player to decide to whether to enter a cheat code and become immortal than just to ruin all the atmosphere around you. I was so scared of Doom 2 when I was a kid. The only way I could play it was with the IDDQD, the immortality cheat code, just because it was scary as shit for me. Sweating behind my PC back in the day. And sometimes it's the failure of the immersion, the sense of the recreating the sense of place and all that is not something the player does. Sometimes the devs do that themselves, and in some cases it may be a design mistake. In other cases, it may be a design tradition which becomes an obstacle for the design of the game itself. Like saving your progress, speaking about the Elden Ring, no saving except from the bonfires. And Elden Ring was not my first Souls-like game, and it got easier with time. Because when you play the original Demon Souls or Dark Souls or Bloodborne, it was even more cruel back then. But the save game system also was really good connected with the narrative of the game and with the story, with the mechanics. It wasn't just you cannot save anytime. There's only checkpoints. This was a more complex thing. What do you think about taking away? I thought that I saw Harvey writing somewhere on social media, that this is not the exact quotation, but it was something like, there is no point in fighting for immersive mechanics as long as a player has an endless option to quick load. Again, not the exact quote, but maybe I'm making things up. But anyway, this is a safety net which often allows to to break the rules created by the devs. And
right. I mean, that's part of the problem with being around for as long as we've been around, is I probably argued both ways and probably meant it, right? Like, on one hand, if you can just reload, then there's no real consequences. And man, in Elden Ring, when you find that next site of grace, you may play for an hour, failing. And what did I gain for this hour? I didn't kill any bosses. I didn't advance the story, Well, I explored a little territory and I unlocked 2 new sites of grace. And now I can go there whenever I want. And that gives me access to these plants or whatever. So little incremental bits of progress. But there was a time period when, I don't know if you remember this, but like people raged online against checkpoints.
Yeah,
right? Like,
sure.
I think Daikatana came out, and instead of save anywhere, which was the way it was done, they had save gems or something like that.
Yeah, PC players were shouting that this is console influence.
Yeah, they raged against this instead of seeing it as a design choice. But then those same people in, Dark Souls would be like, no, this is the brilliant feature where you've got to get to the next bonfire, and that's your reward, and that's the new beachhead that you launch your new movements from. On one hand, it does take away some consequences. On the other hand, well, the best thing about it is, like in Dishonored, if I want to see what would happen if I throw a grenade into this room right now and kill the people that I'm supposed to protect or whatever, does the game support it? If I possess a rat and go under the table, and just play around and do this suboptimally, and I spend an hour doing different combinations, and then I reload and then I go do it optimally, cleanly, with the maximum use of resources, the maximum efficiency. And that's a perfectly valid way to play. All these things are just design choices, and any of them can work. And I wish people would stop with the holy wars, about this platform or that platform or this feature or that feature. It's like, man, you can probably name brilliant games that have done this or that have raged against doing it. Both, and if both exist, then, I mean, your topic of immersion is interesting because a lot of people have gone through periods where they elevated that sense of being there, that sense of presence, that sense of flow, where everything else goes away and you're just like in the world of the game in the way that when you read a book or watch a film, you're in the world for a couple of hours, all your existential bullshit goes away. But then people have also raged against immersion as like some sort of elevated value or whatever, like, or they've said to demystify it, like, yes, all things have a sense of like when I'm into it, I'm engaged and I focus on it, of course. This shirt that I'm wearing is from The Lighthouse, filmed by David Eggers, I think, who made The Witch. Which, if you haven't seen The Witch, it's fucking brilliant, and The Lighthouse is brilliant. The Lighthouse is one of my favorite films of the last few years, just because when you watch it, you are so in this crazy world with these two guys, and it's very bleak and very absurdly funny, and also terrifying, and at times oppressive, at times gross. But man, while that movie has you, it really has you. You're really in the world with those guys on this little rock with the waves beating against, and what's going on, and does this guy trust that guy? Or are they going to turn on each other? It's just such a good job of like making a compelling world that you turn everything else off and you give in to that. And I was just thinking about the history of things we take for granted. I remember when Dune 2 came out, with an N, not Doom, and the little guys talk to you. And it was like one of the first times I ever played a game where the feedback was instant and it was verbal, and it goes straight to your brain when it's verbal. If you click and you have to read an icon, like, did it go green or red? Is it the shield or the horn? Is he going to summon people? What is the icon saying? Or text or whatever. That's fine, but like that was the games at the time, right? And then as soon as you clicked on them and you told them to go somewhere, one click with the mouse, everything was a left click with the mouse. That was an innovation, right? And then they go there and they go, yes, sir. And they start moving out. And that was an innovation, right? And I remember when Terminator Future Shock came out, and we had all struggled with all these controls, right? Like System Shock, when it shipped, you could have two joysticks, or you could have a mouse and a joystick. You could like reach up with the mouse and grab the little guy and crouch him, and then your viewpoint crouched. And to turn, you would like move the cursor to the edge of the screen and it would become like a little curved arrow, and you press it and then you would slowly turn or whatever, right? But like Terminator Future Shock came out and they said, whichever way you move the mouse, the camera is slave to that. So I moved the mouse this way and we look that way. And it like changed the fucking world. Why didn't we do that before? Why didn't everybody just go, oh yeah, that's the way to do that, And but suddenly this barrier to like, let me find the fucking cursor, let me make it a little, oh, it's too far that way, now I'm going to turn this way, I'm going to sidestep, oh, hold the mouse, there's a delay, tick, 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 like these things are all barriers to just like being there, right? And so, you might ask the question, like, why don't you guys work in VR then? Like, it's like, well, because nobody will pay you to work in VR. But also there are other problems with VR, right? Nobody's really solved them.
It doesn't grant the feeling of space. Actually, it's just
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
I mean, like Half-Life Alyx is a masterclass.
Oh, yes.
Things from Valve are often a masterclass that people can digest for years and emulate, and I love that about the Valve games. But anyway, all of these little features, like in Thief, I remember the first time I played Thief, and the guards use these sort of like Jacobean stage play kind of voices to give you the feedback about what their mental state is. Like, nothing. I guess I'll go back to patrol or whatever, and it's like, man, this was like, now we take it for granted. Like Raph was saying about Force speakers, now you put on your headphones and all games sound pretty fucking great, actually. The spatial environment stuff is so good audio wise, but so it's weird. Like I imagine the game developers of the 80s, I don't know how they feel because like they were dealing with four colors and like, a PC speaker making these sizzling sounds.
Yeah, 1 kilobyte
They
of
could do.
music. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And people would innovate even in that space. I remember I skipped most of the PC stuff because I had a machine called an Atari 1040 ST, and it had really good sound and really good graphics. And I had an Amiga at some point when I was in the military because they just came with good sound and good color and like yes, there were brilliant games on a Tandy computer or whatever, but the aesthetic part, I guess you could argue that your game mechanics are also aesthetics in a sense, but like what I mean is the music, the sound, uh, the soft lighting, the beginnings of that, like all that stuff. There were people clearly in Europe that were interested in advancing that.
Do you find it scary how exponential it is at every generation? Like the time we spend to get, because now like you look at those super cool advanced rendering engines. If you spend the time, and that's what they do when they ship a demo, like they put their entire army of people on it, and it's a 5 minutes demo, and it looks like a movie, and you go, oh my god, this is incredible. And then it's, now we're gonna finally be able to make good games. Sure. And then you find yourself having to learn how to make the atmosphere feel, whatever, like the refraction of the light on the this and blah, and the, so that you can have that cool image. And how do you feel about all that? Because this is part of immersion in a way, right?
Yeah, but it time shows that it's not even necessary to have all that to make a believable world. I still play Half-Life 1 sometimes. I generally adore the early 3D graphics with all that awkward facial animations, but it still works for me. I'm still scared by those industrial, tanks and vehicles, whatever I need to jump my ass into. It doesn't mean that
game.
Sure,
do you appreciate the game through your eyes of when you found out Half-Life 1 back then, or if you had never played Half-Life 1, could you be able to appreciate Half-Life 1 today?
I'm sure I would be able to appreciate Half-Life 1 today because I'm a retro boy in a way. I had a really clunky and old PC for a longer while than I normally would have if I was working back in the day at school. Like Pentium 100 for like 7 years or something until I graduated year 1 of the university. I haven't got a new PC, and that was the reason I played a lot of older games that came out before I got my PC. I got my PC back in 1996. I was 10 or 11 years old. And I learned older games because I didn't have new hardware. That's it. So Half-Life, actually, it was a borderline for me. After Half-Life, everything was, we need 3D FX, we need shaders, we need all that shit. And so I went backwards.
I always tell people that one of my favorite games of all time is Ultima Underworld.
Yeah.
And I always tell people I did not have a great PC when that came out. And Underworld had a feature where you could turn off the textures. And so I don't remember if it was a hotkey. I have a sense that it was an O on screen. Like, remember how the UI used to not be buried in some menu, but it all used to be in a frame or whatever. So you had
and
to
that's a
render
little
less,
screen.
right?
Yeah.
All right. So I think there was an O you clicked with the mouse or something, but you could turn off the textures entirely. And the world was grayscale. And then you run around and it's smooth and you could jump and, cast spells and fight. And then when I would get to a new area that I had not seen before, I would click the O so I could like look around, and
where are we?
Whoa,
Okay,
the game is beautiful, and like it's so pretty. And then I would click the O again and like run off, and so but it's funny what you say. Just I want to answer your question and then also Raph's. I'm going to respond to something you said and then answer Ref's question about intimidation of the next gen stuff, which is a very good question. But like you said something though, Peter, where it's not about the graphics, and I'll never forget. Like Rob Fermier was a guy at Looking Glass. He was a designer programmer, brilliant guy. He went on to work for on that historical RTS series, whatever the fuck that was called. But he worked on System Shock and I think maybe some other Looking Glass titles. I don't want to get it wrong. Maybe he worked on Thief, and then he split and made Irrational Games with Ken Levine and John Shea, and they made some games, Irrational Games, like System Shock 2. But I remember I remember Rob Fermier, Zimu, went to GDC one year, and he had a speech on immersion, and it deliberately didn't talk about graphics or sound at all. It broke everything down into like what you expect to be there, the plausibility of the environment. If you go into someone's office, you expect there to be a trash can under the desk, and maybe there's a note in it where somebody started a note and then threw it away and it has a clue on it. Maybe you go down the hall to the bathroom, there's a bathroom there, and you can go inside and there's urinals, and like this sort of expectation that maps to the real world, the plausibility of things. But you can find his GDC talk, and it's probably old news by now, or simplicity, because everybody's intuitively incorporated all of what he was saying. But he made the argument at GDC one year that no, immersion is not about graphics. It's about entering this flow state and engaging with the mechanics, and no barriers to you being able to like figure things out or play, and meeting your expectations, and then also surprising your expectations, but not in a way that seems dumb, but that seems like, yes, that is a thing that could happen there. And so that's why, like a lot of text games, like people get super immersed in a Dwarf Fortress.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so engaging, it's so deep and so follows rules, right? Like it's plausible. But anyway, on the other subject, like, man, Raph, I would be terrified if I was at the beginning of my career. Instead of like, I'll make 2 or 3 more games, I hope. But like right now, the kids, I can't imagine what they're thinking, because like, everybody they know that's a game developer, half of them are out of work. It's terrible. It's been going for a while. Big companies control almost everything, including all the media. All the media is owned by a few billionaires, It's like a cyberpunk story. But also AI, like, AI tools, I'm not terrified of them. I do think there's some ethical concerns, and I think there's some problems, of course. But like at the end of the day, we've been using automated tools forever. Like artists, like clicking on, a procedural mossy rock generator and making like, no, let's make me 3 versions of this mossy rock, and then I'll choose one of them or whatever. Like I've been in games long enough to remember when the studio was staffed by 2D artists, some of whom at where I started had made their profession like music posters. That's where they came from, and then they moved into computer. And like suddenly there was this new crop of people coming in from college who all used 3D Max or Lightwave, and instead of like the way they used to do animations on the Ultima team was that someone would go into D-Paint and they would draw the avatar or a monster or whatever from one angle, and then they would do 8 angles of that, all independent, like everything drawn and every attack drawn, and that there were whole departments that did that. And then I remember this guy starting, Nico Mather, who went on to do MTV's like whatever that was called, those weird little things in the 90s where they would show the logo and it would grow eyes and become a zombie, or like
Demo
some of the
scene?
weird.
A demo scene,
What?
no? Demo scene?
Well, for MTV though, I think he worked for MTV doing
right.
those little fillers, right? It's a very innovative, very talented guy. But he came in, and I remember on one of the Ultimas, he modeled this like fully 3D modeled this troll. and had it walking, and its earring was swinging, and it had like skulls on its belt or whatever. It was like really well done. And suddenly we were in the age of people like, even if you were going to derive a 2D series of animation, you would just pose this model and have it animate from different camera angles and save that out. You could actually automate that with a script, right? And all the people that were used to hand doing all the animations, they didn't have anything to do after that. They either made the transition or they went and worked somewhere else. And these kinds of things are coming constantly in video games. Scripts to auto update everything, like tools to procedurally generate things. And so there's a very scary part of AI that's unregulated and unethical and like needs to be reined in and is an existential threat, et cetera. And then there's another part of it that is just like the thing that games technology has been doing since the beginning of time, right? Like lighting all used to be done by hand, and then it was done by probes, and now it's bounce lighting. It's you theoretically need fewer people to do some of the same things. But the point is, regardless of where you come down on that, because I certainly feel the scary parts of it as well. The point is, nobody knows what games are going to be like in 5 years. It's like there's a bunch of speculation that the AI tools are overblown, but clearly some of them are helping people like Copilot through code or whatever, and it, is concept art going to be a viable job 5 years from now? I hope so, because I like the human touch of the artists. And when you talk to an artist and they're drawing from their classical training or their lived experience, all that stuff is amazing. But when you're competing against teams that can mostly do that in like 30 minutes or whatever, what would take you weeks, that's a huge sea change, right? And is the industry going to be what it was when we made Dishonored, right? Like we're a mid-sized team of people could take $25 million and make a fucking amazing game that everybody loves for 10 years. And the company could take 25 million marketing. And I had a friend from Valve that was in the Outback on a break. He was on a vacation. And he texted me and he said, man, a bus just went by me in the Australian Outback going to a small town. And there's a long banner on the side about Dishonored with Corvo. And he was like, wow. And I was like, what the fuck? We've never had this before. So like, will the industry ever be like that again? Or will it just be, everybody either plays Fortnite or they play some game inside Fortnite I don't have a strong opinion about like it should be this way, because it was a different way before me and it will be a different way after me, right? And people decide what they want to buy and what they want to play and how they want to make games. I don't control all that, right? But I am worried. I am worried about some things being lost, like proliferation of individual voices. When you have games made by small people or small numbers of people, like you end up with a lot more experimentation and a lot more weird stuff. One of my favorite games is What Remains of Edith Finch. It's like this tiny indie game about people dying and about shielding them from the fear of death. And sometimes like the profit motive is scary because the art gets thrown by the wayside somehow, so I'm rambling, and probably you could find something in everything I just said to pat me on the back for or punch me in the face for, whatever. But like, I'm just saying, nobody knows right now. Even the people that tell you they know, they're fucking selling you something, because nobody knows what development is going to be like in 5 years. No one knows what the game market is going to be like in 5 years. Raph, did I say anything crazy there? Is there anything you strongly disagree with in that?
No, I mean, of course, I feel very similar in the sense of it was better before, but it was not, because it's, I guess people before us probably thought the same. So things are definitely changing. I do have a feeling, though, I mentioned earlier the abundance of content, the emergence of subscription models. To me, those things combined doesn't lead to something that seems super healthy from creatively, because it means it's going to be harder and harder to make a difference, for people to invest in your game. Like I'm talking about gamers specifically, because it's like if you go to a buffet restaurant, you just want a little bit of everything, but that you're into nothing specifically. And I think right now there's a tendency to devalue content, which worries me a lot. And I hope as a world we'll turn this around. And again, I'm not talking just about video games. It's a general thing for me. I frankly find myself not even watching TV shows anymore because I'm just overwhelmed. I just don't know which one to watch. I'd rather, there was a time where it was easier for me when people would tell me, hey, I saw that and that was fantastic, you have to watch it or whatever. But even with that approach nowadays, it's like there's so many of them anyway. So I don't know.
I agree with that as well. And it's like, I love going to the theater. I love the theater experience at a good screen with a good projector and good audio and the right audience, and watching a movie is fantastic, But I remember when we went through COVID and everybody was watching movies from home, and everybody was prefer to watch it on Apple TV or Netflix or whatever. And some people even like watching on their phone, with the earpieces in or AirPods in or whatever. And I remember old school Hollywood people raging against this, like bring back the theaters. And it's like, I agree. I love going to the theater when the audience isn't obnoxious, when there's quick access to a bathroom. I don't have to walk 15 minutes to pee in the middle of the theater. The guy in front of me is not on his fucking phone. Like, the screen looks good, the audio is actually good, the film doesn't break, the price is not $100 to go see the movie. Like, there's all these reasons that the theater experience can be great or kind of shitty, right? And I just watched Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another with Leonardo DiCaprio in it. It was brilliant. I fucking love Paul Thomas Anderson. I went to the theater for that. I went to a good theater. I went to the Alamo Drafthouse. I went with people that would appreciate it, right? But at the same time, I'm also watching Alien Earth by the showrunner writer called Hawley, who worked on Legion, the TV series about Professor Xavier's son that was so brilliant. And I just finished the first season of Alien Earth, and I fucking loved it. And I alternated between watching it on my TV in the office, my TV downstairs, and the service remembered exactly the second I was at. I could turn it off here and go downstairs to feed my dogs, and then turn it on there, and it would pick up exactly where I left off. And then I would, like, at times I'm going to go to bed, but I'm not sleepy yet, so I'm going to pull the phone out and watch it right here, and it picks up exactly there. And I finished the episode, and I'm sure that, like, to somebody like Martin Scorsese, this is heresy. Like, what are you fucking doing? Watching it on this little screen. But my immersion is very strong. The show has some missteps, and it goes slow in a couple of spots, but in general, it's brilliant. I love it. And it introduces some new xenomorphs that are fantastic, and it's like RPG design. It's not just a show. It's like the world itself you feel it larger than it is on the screen. It's crafted around it, where there's little moments that imply the world is much bigger than the story you're being told, which is what I love. It's what I love about Dishonored or Deus Ex. And getting that right is very hard, and so I had a great time watching that, and I also had a great time going to the theater, but I'm very careful about which theater I go to, right? So in any case, things are going to change. My whole point is the kids are going to do things different, and it's okay. My concern is more like on the executive side, on the business owner side, what channels the finance people are allowing for the creativity.
But I think, and I think that's the thing, is that a lot of what you're talking about is convenience. I think we are ready to sacrifice the quality of the experience itself for convenience. One experience I had lately, which I'm surprised I would say that, but So like everybody, I used to have a hi-fi sound system at home when I was in the 80s or whatever, you know, and then little by little, you know, people miniature, you know, we have smaller versions, and then you have iPods, and then that's done. You're just listening to MP3s or Spotify or whatever, and on a computer screen, or like some decent speakers on your car or whatever. And then I think it was 3 months ago, I went to a friend of mine, and he had those big ass speakers from I don't remember the brand, but they were like super hi-fi, like the equivalent of the kind of things that, you know, I forgot existed. And he played music on it, and the same music that I know already. And I was like, man, this sounds so incredible. And I forgot because I think the convenience, the Spotifys of this world, etc., they want us to forget. They want us to have access to, because we are machines that just like, you know, we're consumers. So if you give me a smaller screen, a shittier sound, but it's faster, it's cheaper, it's free maybe, and it's just there for me all the time, and I can, instead of like having to walk through the movies or to walk downstairs to turn on my hi-fi system, etc., if it's already in my ear somehow because I already have an iPhone, then it's a win for me in a way, but most of them for them. And it's kind of a loss actually for me if you really think about it this way. But we became so accustomed to easy content, easy accessible content, that we are fine with less quality.
It's the story of frozen dinners.
It's the story of what?
Frozen dinners.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
you know, your grandmother
microwave.
used to cook like your favorite food. Like this week, I made lately I've been cooking one old school meal a week, and I should be cooking more, but at least I try to do that, right? I bought some cannellini beans the other day and cooked them in herbal salt and butter, and I made them with some pork chops, and they were fucking fantastic. And I used the deglazing method to make the gravy from the pork chops with milk, and scraped the pan, and it was fucking fantastic. And this week I also made chicken and dumplings, which is like a southern favorite that my great grandmother used to make for me. And I followed her recipe pretty much, except I used milk to thicken the broth, and she never did that. And it was fantastic, right? But like there was a point in my life when she started to get older, and she started more and more of the frozen dinners, right? Instead, like tonight we're just going to do a TV dinner. And back in those days, you would peel the foil off of the TV dinner, off the compartments that had like this steak or the peas or whatever, and you would leave the foil over the pudding, and then you would cook it in the oven, and then you peel the foil off the parts you didn't want, and you would sit there and eat this out of a metal. It's a terrible fucking experience. The food is not great. It doesn't feel like anyone made it. It feels like a factory spat it out, you know. But more often than not, nowadays people eat foods that are frozen, reconstituted in a bag, you know, whatever. And it's like not the same, but it's convenient and it's cheap, and the company makes more money on us this way. I mean, that meal that I made with the cannellini beans and the pork chops, like I was going to the grocery store anyway, and I grabbed pork chops and I grabbed those 2 cans of those beans with a pop top, and I already had some herbal salt and butter and shit, olive oil. So it cost me almost no time. It cost money, of course, because food is now fucking super expensive. But I made the meal in like 10 minutes because I like put the beans in a pan with some butter, and like they're going. I let them get soft and mushy, you know, delicious. And then I made the pork chops cook like 4 minutes on each side, and then the gravy takes a couple of minutes, or it burns.
Oh shit! I'm hungry now.
I know, right? And so I made the meal in like 10 minutes, and it was, if I had said no, let's go to the restaurant, it would have had to get in the car, drive, wait on a list, pay fucking $80 for 2 people to eat or whatever, and then like you know, and it would be good probably because I would go to a good place, but like maybe not as good actually, and also much more time and money, you know. So I feel like something is, I mean, this is an old story of capitalism, right? That's why I compared it to frozen food, but everything that's happening for convenience and for shareholder profit and all of that kind of stuff, it kills the artistry a little bit. And we often don't know what we've got until it's gone.
Oh
Like
yes.
the sort of move fast and break things crowd, right? They first of all, we had an indie proliferation. When was this? The early 2000s or the around the time we were working on Dishonored, so 2010, 2005.
Yeah, after 2010. Yeah.
Just an explosion of these indie games, starting probably with Braid and then
Yeah.
everybody making indie games. Like, I don't feel like we recognized what we had at the time, right? Like, it was still those games coming out, some of those people made a lot of money in their ongoing games. But like, man, what a Cambrian explosion of cool shit in every different direction, revitalizing the roguelike. And maybe Dishonored rode that wave as well, because even though we had a AAA budget, we had indie sensibilities at some level. And Arkane had just prior to that been an independent company for sure. But on the negative side, the sort of move fast and break things crowd, like, that's fine if you're talking about causing your let's cause this software to fail so that we can go fix the bugs. I want it to fail as fast as it can so I can go identify where the break is. But when you're talking about the education system or the food that we eat, or like, you want to be careful what you're about to break, because there's institutional knowledge that's lost when a whole studio gets shut down, for instance, because some people never come back to games. I don't know, man. Doing things the quick way so that shareholder value goes up and your labor costs go down. Capital is always looking for labor to be free, right? And whether it's a company town where you get your medicine and your food from the company store using the company credits, like, and you never leave the town, you just work in the mine, and that's like, literally, we've gone through phases like that where the business owners and the capital owners will just like push everyone down and narrow everything to that frozen dinner experience, and it's irresponsible and it's anti-human.
Yeah. Do you feel like gamers want the frozen dinner version of the games right now? I mean, we're going through interesting changes with EA being just bought and Microsoft having bought also Activision, etc. There's like, I look around, there's like almost no more actors in the video game industry in terms of big ones, right? Because everybody bought everybody.
Yeah, there's fewer and fewer individual voices or independent companies. I think good stuff still happens, obviously, because great games come out. But it feels like there's something off with the whole model, I think the internet has largely been a negative experience, right? Like, we love to talk about how great the internet is, but given its effect on populism, and not just in the United States, but every country, and given its effect on disinformation, and given its effect on the concentration of political or economic power.
Well, that's more social media than internet, right?
Yeah, it feels like a negative, right? It is mostly the social internet. Social media has largely killed the internet. Like, I remember there was a time when you could go start a web page because you like this obscure writer. This is the Ursula K. Le Guin fan appreciation page, and I'm going to talk about all my experiences here and throw a couple of animated GIFs on it. And you would find that page and you'd be delighted. Oh my God, I read The Wizard of Earthsea when I was a kid too. I read The Left Hand of Darkness and it changed my mind about gender and a bunch of interesting science fiction shit. And now it doesn't feel like that. There's an app for the New York Times, which is, there's...
Right.
Yeah. Did you see Elon Musk has announced that he's making video games with his AI company?
Oh my God. Jesus.
That sounds like an interesting move.
Yeah, you just have to look 5 years from now and see what great game they made or whatever. And if they made a great game, they were right,
Yeah.
With AI, hopefully they listen to this podcast so they won't screw things up totally.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to do what they want, right? So there's someone has to do that.
Yeah. Back to it. We've mentioned Deus Ex a lot of times already. And I remember what I specifically, among all other things, I specifically loved about the original Deus Ex is that the whole game is set in the night. There is no morning, there is no noon, it's just night. And in later games, in Mankind Divided, it's daytime in Prague, and the night comes sometime after you trigger a major story events. So it sort of wipes everything that you forgot to do before during the daytime. It's a firewall of its kind. But there are examples of real-time events in RPGs, which are also obviously, they are tasked to create the feeling of a live world, the feeling of that sort of immersion when characters in the game have their own stuff to do. But sometimes it's interesting how to find the right measure for things like that. I've been playing a lot of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 recently. It's a great game. And there were a lot of situations when I was late to a scheduled meeting with an NPC and they just left. And I can't say it was fun every time. Like once it was there, right? Cool. Can I speed up and, meet the needed character? Yes, I can. Well, they argue for some time. Why would you left? Why would you stay for so long? And I've been playing mini games. I need the shop. I need the blacksmith. I got to do my RPG stuff, and the character just leaves. And I can't say it's cool. It's like it's an original feeling. Like, oh, it's like that here. I'm not sure if it works for all the NPCs and in the game, but it was probably impossible to play the game. So it's measured. I'm still haven't figured out how exactly measured it is. But what's your take on these, hocus pocuses?
Yeah, I mean, I've read about when Ridley Scott was making Blade Runner and he wanted everything to be like choked in smoke and rain and wet and black night with neon. And he was like dedicated to that, right? And so there's probably some of that that we were thinking when we made Deus Ex. But I remember when Raph and I were working on Dishonored, we specifically said, let's don't make everything night. But then the art team did go for like an atmospheric, it's golden hour, the sun is just setting or something, right? So it's like kind of a relief.
Now loading the House of the Dev.
Yeah, so I was going to tell a story about Steve Powers as a guy that Raph and I both worked with. A very creative guy. He worked on Dishonored and Prey. But he started a couple of years before me in games, and he was at Origin on the Ultima series. And he worked on Serpent Isle and whatever the next one was called. Oh no, Blackgate and Serpent Isle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he worked on some after that. And he did the City of Mages, Moonshay, I guess it was called. And there was a moment in that where there was a very old man who had a beautiful young wife. And just down the block, there was a young painter who drank all the time and painted. And if you just hung out in their house at midnight, they would both go to bed, the old man and his wife. And then at like midnight, she would get up out of bed and go down out of the house, down the street to the artist's house and get into his bed. And this was a detail that like most people probably never noticed. And then before dawn, she would get up and she would go down the street and she'd get in, and then she would get up and they would have breakfast or whatever. And they had funny one-liners about how well he slept and she did not sleep well or whatever, and it's like this kind of detail of scheduling of NPCs and whether the NPC is lifelike is endlessly fascinating to people. It's the sim life part of this, right? Where, I mean, like, you have your own life. You could do that if you want and suffer the consequences. But being able to see the consequences and rewind and watch them again is just like, it's as much a human fantasy, like life without consequences, or being able to see the multiple branches, or being able to peer in on other people's lives and watch them. It's as much a fantasy as like being able to turn invisible or something. It's like, it just goes with the territory, and so it's endlessly fascinating. And the more simulated it is, um, the more brilliant it is, and the probably the fewer people notice it. By the way, I'm still sick. I'm about to sneeze. But if you look at Dwarf Fortress, my friend Ben Horn is playing this guy I've worked with off and on for the last few years, and Ben is an amazing dude. He's a producer, and he is really into, what is it called? Caverns of Cud and Dwarf Fortress. These kind of text ASCII kind of games, and he was telling me a story about how one of his dwarves was married but unhappy, and secretly she was in love with this other dwarf that this lady dwarf that ran something part of the mine or whatever. And so more and more she started going over there to see this other lady, and like wasn't there on her job. Something terrible happened. A bunch of dwarves died. The area becomes flooded. It becomes haunted. There's ghosts there now. A dragon or something moves in to live in that area now. And if you ever want to go back and clear it, you have to like kill the dragon and the ghosts and drain the water. And then the dwarves that are in love, like one of them gets sick and dies. And so the other one is fucking sad and her life is wrecked. And it's just like, he's telling this story, and I'm just like, none of this is scripted. This is all just like the rules of the game playing out. And it's fucking crazy. It's exactly what I love, except the game is a little too deep for me. Like it's too much of a pain in the ass for me to play.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I'm Goldilocks, right? It has to be just enough simulation and just enough hand holding, and it's a little too hardcore actually. But he's loving it, but that fascination is there, obviously, and everybody has a favorite story. I often tell the story of, my favorite fight in Far Cry 2. It feels like this to me, and it's because the rules of the game. Like I took my favorite missions in Far Cry 2 were the assassination missions, not the plot stuff. That was cool, but like you go to one of these signal towers out in the middle of the bush, and you wire into it, and a creaky voice like, your assignment, if you choose to accept it, is the following target. And like you go to this location, and this guy's driving around in a white SUV, and he's got a car in front of him and a car behind him, and your target is the VIP in the white SUV. And so I fire a rocket at the first car. The rest of the cars try to get around the crash. The second car stops and the guys get out. I take them down. There's now a fire burning. I'm driving. I jump in my car and I chase the guy. A zebra gets in my way, and I've tried really hard not to kill the fucking animals, but I run into the zebra and it kills it, and my car's fucked up now. And I get out, and the white SUV stops. I kill the driver. I shoot through the window and kill the driver. And the guy that I'm supposed to kill gets out, and he's wearing a white suit and he has white hair, and he has this huge hand cannon pistol, and he's running at me firing this gun. And like I'm like, fuck, where do I hide? And I'm shooting back at him. And ultimately he kills me because I step back into some fire. And then the last thing I see is him running up, shooting me, and the fire is burning everywhere, and the dead zebras over there, and it's all fucking dynamic and sad. And I put the controller down, and my hands are just covered in sweat because this battle went on and on and on. It was like going fishing and fighting a fish for 30 minutes. And I literally put my controller down. My hands are covered in sweat, and I picked up the phone and called Clint Hawking, and I was like, "Dude, I just said this," and he's just laughing. And it was like, this is why I play games, is this dynamic sequence of things. I went out of my way. I found some elective content. I didn't have to do it. I chose my approach. I could have waited for them to stop and get out of the car and snipe the guy or whatever. But I was like, fuck it. I'm going to rocket that first truck, and then I'm going to win this fight. And then I lost. And yet it was one of the best gaming experiences I had that year, period. And, the zebra was part of it, the fire was part of it, fire propagation system. And I just called him to tell him like this was brilliant and I love it. And I've told the story before, but it's like, I have now similar stories from Elden Ring or from, other games that I've loved and Prey. That's why that year when Prey came out, I didn't work on it. So I came back from France after Dishonored 2 and the studio was working on Prey. And so I just got to do a few playthroughs of Prey. I tried with no alien powers first, and I was the turret guy, and I fucking loved that. And then I tried only alien powers, and I would become a coffee cup or whatever. And I loved that playthrough. And by the end of my third playthrough, I knew this Talos 1 back and forth like my house. And this has always been true. Ultima Underworld, going into the Stygian Abyss, System Shock, going on Citadel Station, the city and Thief. By the time you finish working on Deus Ex, you know every pixel. Dishonored, same thing, and it's just like I would go to sleep. And if you've ever been snow skiing and you all day you have this sense of rushing, and then you go to sleep at night and you're falling asleep and you feel that you wake up, you feel that you have that motion sense. Like I would get that from first person games. I'd fall asleep at night and I would be like moving through, in Dungeon Master, the one square at a time, like turn, go, like Eye of the Beholder, those games, and Underworld and System Shock, all those games do that to me. Prey did that to me, and it's a very gratifying experience, right? So yes, I play fewer and fewer games, but it's because I can sniff out immediately what the game is about.
Sure.
And if there's something like, oh, this is something novel in this, Shadow of Mordor, it's like a Lord of the Rings game with some RPG shit in it. But it had the Nemesis system in it.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that's worth checking out because that's super novel to me. Baldur's Gate is kind of like an RPG that maybe you played the earlier Baldur's Gate, maybe you played their earlier games. You kind of expect, when I go into this, I'm expecting certain things, and they delivered on that. But they delivered to the degree of depth and scope that blew my mind, right? And the degree to which different people could try different things and they would work, or they would provide some interesting detail. This is crazy. Like D&D is so deep and big, and if you play the Warlock, you have a patron, like an arch fae figure that comes from the world beyond and visits you personally and talks to you and toys with you or whatever. They went there. They did all of that. And so there are still games that come out that like remind me why I love games as much as I love books and movies and music, and it's usually because I can forget everything else, engage, flow, forget the world, turn out the lights, turn on the sound, and immerse myself in the game.
Nice. Is there any game you're looking forward to play in the near future? Something you're waiting for as a gamer?
I wanted to play Cyberpunk after it got fully patched.
Yeah, just did that.
And Raph just did it, and so I might follow in his footsteps there. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's funny how much time has come and passed, and what I look forward to, and often it's like individual people I know that are working on something, right? But like Raph said, there are fewer and fewer of those groups that I point to and go, they consistently make this kind of thing, so therefore I'm into that, I'm generally not into the super huge blockbusters because they feel to me like and this is not a criticism, because if it works, right? But it feels like a combination that we've already explored, just done, deeper or more bells and whistles. Not deeper, actually, more bells and whistles.
Yeah, I would say not deeper. Yeah, definitely more like protected, and yeah, I'm kind of the same. I like games that take risks, and there's many games that protect the players so much so that they don't have to deal with some other problems. That then it makes the experience for me very prescribed, and it kind of loses its fun.
Yeah, there's a moment to go to Disneyland, if that's what you want. But I always say games are either like the roller coaster where everything is very calculated. You can't leave the track, and at the right moment they blow cold air on you and they play a certain sound, and at the right moment you do a drop and then you do a curve. And then the other experience is like when you're 16 and me and some friends broke into an abandoned house down the block that there was a ghost story around. And we went into it and we just walked around for 30 minutes exploring it, seeing old magazines on the table, broken window. Oh,
that sounds more fun.
An opossum moved into this house for a while and lived in the fucking kitchen. And then it shat everywhere and left, or whatever, it died. We found its body, right? Or like then a creak happens upstairs in one of the bedrooms and you're like, lose your mind. Because what if somebody's, even though this place is wrecked, what if somebody's actually still living here? Oh my God. And so this games can be one or the other, right? The super curated, carefully calculated, everything is done for you, and it's a thrill ride. And I love roller coasters, by the way. I love games like that. Or it's like Dwarf Fortress, and like, for me, I fall like probably 3/4 toward that, that spectrum. Like I think about Memento all the time, and it's just like, this is a crazy fucking movie that I loved, and the comedies from that era are, I still think about them, every now and then someone plays the scene from Vanilla Sky where Cameron Diaz wrecks the car deliberately with Tom Cruise in it, and it's just like, this shit is dialed up, to 11 in a way.
I'm probably waiting for the next Larian game. It might be a while. I'm waiting for there's probably going to be a new Fallout at some point, right? That would be exciting to me. I'm waiting actually for Outer World 2, which is should be very soon. So that I'm excited about.
It almost feels like Larian is held back by the D&D mechanics and world.
Well, but not this time.
I know, that's what I mean, is the new one could be more exciting, right? Because
they
have all the power now,
D&D.
but they're not beholden to the sort of constraints of the D&D mechanics, which did feel at times like they got in the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I really, really enjoyed it. It was just a little too long for me, but man, it's such a mind-blowing game. It's interesting. I heard that there's a new Baldur's Gate 4 that is on the way, and I was like so excited. And it's like, but it's not Larian, so I'm like, oh well. To me, they go.
Sounds weird.
It was more because it was Larian that I liked it rather than the Baldur's Gate thing, which I think whoever owns the IP might have misunderstood that part. I think that's the reason why this game was so successful.
I mean, executives always make that decision, right? They always look, what do we own? We own this IP. Therefore, this IP is the thing with value. Let's make another one. And it's like, dude. Right. The reason that game is great is because the people that made Divinity made it, and they have their shit together, and they care in the right ways. By the way, I love Baldur's Gate, and all my friends were playing it together. And culturally, we don't have that many things anymore together, right? If you look back on the baby boomers, they all went to Woodstock together. When a new album came out by Janis Joplin, they all listened to it. When she died, they all suffered, right? So like those are shared cultural moments. Eating the same candies, even in growing up in America, and now everybody is into something different. It's all fractured. And everybody listens to their own music channel, basically, instead of, I listen to that one DJ who counts down the hits, on Friday night or whatever. And so anytime anything like that happens, like everyone gets together and rallies to play Baldur's Gate 3, to me, it's like a cross-world cultural event that was great because everybody, I'd go to D&D and everybody would spend 30 minutes talking about what they did in Baldur's Gate first, right? And for me, like Raph said, it's a little too long. I love the first act. I love the second act. That's what D&D is all about, wandering the wilderness and finding a goblin outpost or an old abandoned church and killing the undead in it or destroying the undead in it or whatever. But then the city, to me, it bogged down. I'd never really liked games set in big cities.
Yeah, my man. Exactly that.
I like wilderness. And I say that as somebody who's worked on some games set in cities, like, and Dishonored is in a plague, right? When it's ruined and there are fewer people, and you get the sense they're hiding behind their doors. And Half-Life happens during a brutal suppression of the people, martial law and all that. But if you just set a game in a city where everybody's going to the grocery store and walking their dog and all that, that's a hard game to make unless you do something like GTA style where everybody is kind of like um, a simulated person, a pedestrian that as soon as you leave the street, it's brilliant in GTA because
Cyberpunk, by the
okay,
way.
so it deeply tries to do the city and simulate the schedules, and if you kill somebody, then you come back to their apartment later, their girlfriend is crying or their boyfriend is crying or whatever. Like if that kind of thing, is that what it does?
Not really.
Not
No.
exactly.
The Cyberpunk?
No.
No, I would say it's more. I mean, that definitely not my favorite part. To their defense, they have a setting that is really hard to commit to. Like, so you can't really go deep on a setting where there are thousands of characters. It's more like for the mood and the vibe of being in a city, and you see all these cars, you see people around, etc. And that do that part very well, but you don't feel like every individual has something to say. You feel like every individual is just a sheep walking around, right? And that's because of the choice of the constraint of being in a mega city, and they do that extremely well. But yes, you cannot have the depth of what you just mentioned.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. And we've always tried to find an excuse for like having fewer characters because then you can go deep on them. And Rat Plague is one of them, right? Like there was a D&D game I played in not that long ago where we were in a crazy, weird city where everybody was kind of a shadow and they would move around and you had the sense of their lives going on, but you didn't really engage with them because they were kind of out of phase with you. But then periodically you would actually meet with somebody and fully come into their reality and then have a deep conversation with them or whatever. And it seems like almost the perfect setting for a video game, right? Where like we simulate the city, but all the people are dead. They're ghosts moving around the world. You can watch them go through their schedules. Some of them are more opaque than others, and therefore you can follow them and they like leave a coin somewhere or whatever. But then there are the few living people you meet are actually the deep RPG conversations. But that kind of setting, I think, would give you the best of both worlds. And I'm surprised nobody's done that,
I think it's because, I mean, now we're going more into philosophies of development, but I think it's because I don't know if not many gamers or not many creatives care for, because what you're describing would telegraph in a very intelligent way, would justify why some characters you can speak to and some you can't. Right? And so that's an ideal thing because you never really betray the player in a way. Whereas I think most gamers don't care if like you're going around a big city and only some characters are important because they're going to have the little sign above their heads anyway. So that's the one that you need to talk to. See what I mean? I think you and I like the same things often. Like that's why we choose contexts where, we'd rather make a game in a small village where there are 15 people, because then we can all put them on schedules and we can justify everything they do, and they have their little secrets, and it's like some sort of it feels very real, and it feels like you have a chance to impact that place, and dig into each of those little lives. Choosing the context is always important for our kind of games because what we like is small pockets of people that can actually speak, and then the rest are either dead or look at Prey. Everybody's dead, everybody is, and then you have like 5 humans in there that are somewhere, and so then we could do something with them as designers, right? Whereas in a big city like GTA, you can make a fantastic game that does other things, but that doesn't do that part, right?
They're going to focus on a few characters.
is an exception on many levels, like most of the Rockstar games. They are so special. There's not. We can talk about the immersive sim depth in a Grand Theft Auto game, but you can follow a random character on the street, eavesdropping on their phone talk, see what happens. They get in the car, they have their live simulations, some sort of micro stories, and that's important. Whereas in Cyberpunk, and I'm again, this game had its share of critique without me, but they do it brilliantly visually. In terms of visuals, you feel like you're in a crowded space out somewhere outside in a megapolis, but in terms of the game mechanics, it all goes down to 3 effective NPCs on the city square, no matter what moves around those NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm a 3 NPCs on the city square person.
Because I think you learn as a player to discard them. All right, you associate, you read the game, you recognize which are the elements that are interactive, the ones that are
the game language.
Right. You learn the game language, and that's fine. That's what people do. They calibrate to whatever the game is telling them to accept as a reality. So in that game, the characters are just like moving chickens, right? And that's what they are, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think all the things we're talking about here are brilliant games, right? And it's very hard to talk about game design without someone trying to play gotcha and go, this guy said this shitty thing about the game I love. But that's not what's happening here. Like, there are all the games we're talking about are worthy of discussion. Like, GTA is brilliant. I'm sure the new one is going to be deep and cool in ways that we can't even imagine. But like, it seems almost like what they do is akin to what I used to call the hotel problem when we worked on Deus Ex, right? Like, where you need all the people walking around for it to be a city, but you need to clue the player in about this one's worth ignoring, this one's worth following and listening to the conversation, right? And, I think it would be a bad game that would just like highlight them, right? Like, this guy's interesting. Whereas like what you really want is to make the boring people boring. So the player goes, okay, you're basically a boring person, pedestrian that I don't care about, versus the guy on the phone or the person on the phone who's just like saying something intriguing. Now maybe I want to pay attention. That's the dream, right? Is that you could separate the two. But and when we worked on Deus Ex, we had a hotel in the game, and I remember certain people pushing to model every room. And I was like, man, this is the hotel problem or the apartment building problem, where it's like you have like 80 rooms here or 30 rooms here or something, and most of those are boring. Most of them nobody's living in, or they're empty, or
they're similar to each other. Yeah.
They're modular, right? And so the much better thing to do here is to gate off all the doors so they're not even real. There's not even an apartment in there. And instead have 3 or 4, one that is for your mission, one that's for a side mission, one that is for some bullshit if you want to rob an apartment. It's just got its own little story going on. And one that has something weird in it, that is intriguing and that leads somewhere else, right? And that's the right way to do that, because that way the other 26 rooms there's a grate in front of them or whatever. And that way you're not wasting the player's time, because honestly, it's punitive. If I need to go check 26 rooms to find the 4 that are interesting, that's boring, right? And so how to elegantly do that, like in our case, like we just put up like a fucking security grate, and like there's no lock on it that you can pick or whatever. And the 4 that are open, we left the window open, or we left the door, there's no security grate or whatever. And I wonder if that's the approach that the GTA team takes, where it's like some citizens are just like meant to be just like color, and then others are meant to go deep on. And the only thing I wanted to say, and I probably should go soon because we've been going for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
But like, I remember talking to the team at Looking Glass. They had made Underworld, and they were a small team, and it almost killed them to support all of these characters. Like, remember the mountain people with this? I think you can feel the influence of people like Austin Grossman, who's like underrated writer, designer in the industry because he's worked on Dishonored and Deus Ex and System Shock and Underworld, I think. But like, there was this conversation with those people where like, you had some options and you could say, oh, Mountain King, blah, 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 whatever, Mountain People King. But in there, a couple of the options had dwarves built into it. I want to make peace with the dwarves. But you were told they don't like being called dwarves, dude.
Yeah,
Don't call them dwarves. They go to war
funny.
with you, yeah. And so if you forget and you just pick, because they look like fucking dwarves, they're short with beards or whatever, right? And if you pick the wrong option, they get super hostile or whatever. And like, but apparently that part of the game, that sort of like text and doing the AI for the characters and having the factions change based on what you chose, it was so painful to a small team that they just said for System Shock, everyone's dead. And there are no living people on the station, only recordings of them and all of that. And it's just like, it was such a brilliant convention because you feel so lonely inside Citadel Station, wandering around as a player,
Well, once again, having limitations give you more artistic opportunities, right?
Yeah. Necessity is the mother of invention, all that, like creative constraints. Yeah. And of course, once you get a little power or you've done a good game or somebody says, now the budget is open, the world is yours, hire as big a team as you want, solve your problems with money, hire more people. It actually doesn't necessarily make for a better game. It bloats the game. You build up design debt. People always talk about tech debt. Designers can sit down with a piece of paper or a Confluence page or whatever, and they can go to town on a bunch of intriguing stuff that excites people. And then you try to implement it all. And it's just like, oh my God, man, what about a little discipline here? What about not solving your problem with hiring more people? What about just cutting the feature and going deep on the other feature or whatever, And it's just like, we have to learn that lesson over and over. And then you have new people in your team that are like, but why not? I could script this weekend. I know I can do this. And it's like, yes, but everybody's going to be fixing your fucking bugs for the next 3 years. And there's just too much shit to do, Anyway.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
It's been a pleasure. And
it was awesome.
Glad you're back in the United States.
Yeah, man.
We have to catch up so you can tell me about Japan and stuff.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for your time. And thanks for your opinions. It was brilliant and very, very useful to me personally. I'm not sure if this will go on record, but, every time we talk, something beautiful comes to my mind eventually. Some solution or some idea. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Have a nice Saturday, guys. Bye.